Allow me to reintroduce myself.
All right, Matt, welcome to the podcast. If you want to start by introducing yourself and start telling us your story.
I'm a lad from Suffolk, grew up with, I had two brothers, very happy childhood, had a very nice life, we didn't have loads of money or nothing like that, but we had a good life. My mum and dad worked hard, and give us everything that we could ever want. Weren't really very good at school, a bit of got in quite a bit of trouble. So I left school with hardly any GCSEs, any qualifications.
Like most of us.
Yeah. And I just started to work. I'd always been a hard-working lad, like before, even when I was like 13, 14, I'd go in the chicken sheds before school and like pull the chickens out the cages and load them on the lorry, It didn't worry me what I'd done. Worked in like an egg, and where all the eggs come out on a belt, and we put them out, and an egg like chicken factory. I just didn't anything for money. I'd wash cars, I'd do anything. I always had a fascination with making money when I was young. Even then, I had a fascination with making it, but I loved spending it. That was the problem. But so I was always quite a hard-working lad, and then.
Sorry, Matt, you said you have brothers. Are you the oldest brother?
I am the oldest brother. Well,
right.
I was the oldest.
What was the age gap between you?
So it was 2.5 years between all of us, actually, or about 3. Yeah, so 6 years. But actually, it was 6 years between me and Tom, who's my youngest brother, and my middle brother Dan. There's about 2.5, 3 years between each of us.
Okay. Sorry, so chicken factory.
Yeah. Sorry, and I'd do anything with money. I absolutely loved it. Like I say, I left school with fuck all, and I started work as a bricklayer. I got a job as a bricklaying apprentice, which I really enjoyed. It was like a historic builder. Okay. So we done a lot on churches, old buildings, listed buildings, which I really enjoyed. And then I always loved my football. Like football was number one with me. So I played a lot, and there's a guy who I played football with who had a groundwork company, and he offered me good money, a lot more than I was on the other company to go and work for him, and I went and worked for him, and that's where I got my love of groundworks. I absolutely loved it. I think it was the difference every day. There was always something different to do, and I loved working out all the levels and the drainage, and I took to it like duck to water, I think, and I just enjoyed it. And there was always a platform there with him to go and earn good money. We'd done a lot of work on the motorways, and I could work 7 days a week, do whatever hours I wanted. And quite often we'd stay away, and I'd stay away for 3 or 4 weeks. And I weren't great at that for some reason. Even though I was on loads of money, I used to like to get home, after those 3 or 4 weeks. I used to like to get home.
Do you stay away for 3 or 4 weeks at a time?
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Then I'd go home and I'd get on one with me mates and enjoy myself. And I think, why the fuck am I?
Just spend all your money?
Yeah, spend all of it, or go and buy a load of clothes. I love my clothes. And then I'd go back and we'd be sat in the digs and that, and then you think, what the hell am I doing? I could be at home with all my friends. So it was different, but I did, it was.
Did enjoy it?
Yeah, I did enjoy it deep down. And then my brother Dan had left school, and he was working in a sawmill in a builders merchants near our way, where we're from, near Bury St Edmunds. And my boss was looking for some blokes, so I got my brother to come work with us. And then my other brother left school, and he came with us as well. So all of us, we were all mates working for my old boss. Proper mates. Virtually, I got pretty much all of our friends to come and work together, so we had a great laugh.
So everyone you'd grown up with, you brought into this company?
Yeah, a lot of them, and there were a lot of them, if they weren't friends I had, they were then friends my brother had, and then my other brother had, and we kept recruiting out of that pool.
Yeah.
So we had so much fun, That was back in the days when you used to get rained off. Everyone went to the pub, and have a good 12-hour session, and that don't seem to happen anymore. But which is good because we were always praying for it to get rained off, And that was where we started working together, me and my brother. So we my youngest brother spent all his working life working with me. And then I've been working for Gary, my boss, for quite a few years, and I just started to see some of the things he had and some of the things that he's got and some of the things he could do for his kids, some of the places he could go. And, you know, I was getting to my late 20s and I wanted a bit of that for myself. You know, I had a young family and I wanted to make my own money. You know, like I said, I was always driven by money.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't earn enough money. So
I know the feeling.
so I made the decision that I wanted to start up my own business. Spoke to my brother and Goody, who we were working with, and Goody's like Goody's one of the lifelong friends that I've been sort of mentioning that, you know.
Was he the same age as yourself? Or your
Goody was his school year younger than me, but he's the same age. He's only a couple of months between me. But we'd been friends since we were like 3-4 years old.
Right, okay.
You know, we used to go, our families were friendly.
Right, okay.
You know, and he had a farm. We used to go up and knock about up there from a very young age, you know. So it's, and me and Goody had spent most of our working life together because he'd worked at that historic builders that I worked at as well as a bricklayer. He was a bricklayer by trade. And, yeah, so I just felt it was time to go and do my own thing. And then my brother and Goody said that they'll come with us. And my brother Tom said that he wouldn't start with. He didn't really want to do it. So, yeah, and that's where we started, like, Hazegood Construction. And it was a slow start, but once it got going, it really gathered speed, and we were doing quite well.
So was you all partners in it? Or?
Yeah, we were all directors, so we all had 33
points
each, equal share. But to be honest, it weren't worth fuck all, really. You know, it's probably worth a penny, you know. But we worked hard, you know. We did work hard, and we got the work coming in, and we do all the paperwork ourselves. We do all the pricing. We do everything ourselves and go out to work, you know. So we did put the hours in, and we started to get a bit of reward for it. You know, the business was doing quite well. We always had a clear plan of what we wanted to do. You know, we wanted to contract, but then we wanted to start putting money to one side, and we wanted to start developing for ourselves, really, buying plots of land and developing, which was always the dream.
That was your plan from the start?
Yeah, from the start of it, yeah. We always wanted to have that. That was something that we'd all wanted to do. You know, we were all young as well. You know, I was the oldest one. You know, Dan was only, 29, 28, something like that at this time. You know, and Goody was, like I say, a few months younger than me. But that's what we wanted to do. You know, we were clear on that as well, all three of us. It's something that we agreed about. We didn't always agree about everything, I can assure you, but yeah, it could be quite fun. There was quite a few arguments when we first, you know, when there's three of you in a business partnership.
Yeah.
And quite often it was them two fuckers going against me. You'd think it was the brothers, wouldn't you? You'd think it was the brothers stuck together, but quite often it was them going against me. But I suppose I was quite a hothead in them days as well. But we were doing well. We were doing really well. And about 3 years into, so we started in 2008. Like I say, we building it up. We started buying our own plant, our own diggers, our own dumpers. You know, we had all our vans, which we paid for outright. You know, we were very lucky. We could have a yard up the farm. You know, so that gave us a nice place to work from. But yeah, we were doing all right. We were doing well, you know, and then.
How many employees did you have?
So we had about 15 employees at that time.
Okay. So you'd gone from just being the three of you, so now you're taking on a lot more staff.
Yeah. We had to do that fairly quickly because once we started, and we obviously done quite well for the people we worked for, they would just, can we have more? Can we, you know? And you know, and I know it don't sound big numbers, 3 to 15, but actually, when you've just started a business, that's colossal. You know, it's a big jump when you're not used to running a business. You've not got the experience. You know, you're having to cash flow everything, and it was quite a big thing at the time, you know, and people were starting to take notice of us, you know. We were getting invited out on evenings out with suppliers. You know, we were starting to turn over some decent money. You know, and things were really sort of going very well. You know, we were in a good place. You know, we were getting to where where we thought, not the end game, because it never is an end game, but where we wanted to be as a business.
Become comfortable.
I wouldn't. No, I don't think comfortable's the right word. I think we were getting used to running a business. You know, because none of us had done it before. You know, getting used to all the things you have to do and that. But I think it was more that, you know, we were getting to where we wanted to be towards our aims, and you know,
Started to hit your goals.
yeah, a little bit, yeah, definitely. You know, and we could see it was very fulfilling seeing people start to take notice of us, because there's a couple of people, you know, when you start up, some people. You know, someone always has to put a Debbie Downer on it, don't they? You know,
waiting for you to fail.
yeah, they want you to fail. You know, I remember there being comments about us getting vans with sign writing on. It's too early for them to have all that. You know, so people were waiting for us to fail. So it's always nice to sort of prove people wrong, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that I do like to do.
At this point, when you got 15 staff working for you, had your youngest brother Tom come over at this point?
So yeah, Tom was working with us now. He decided he wanted to come with us, which was great. I mean, I absolutely loved working with my brother. Absolutely loved it. You know, like I said, we'd spent most of their working lives together, working all together. You know, apart from probably a year, my brother Dan, my brother Tom obviously came a bit later into the business. You know, he did get offered a directorship, but he didn't want it. But it was good. I really enjoyed having us all working together.
Was you close as brothers when you were
massively
younger?
close. Yeah, definitely.
I've got a couple of brothers myself, and when we were younger, we were really, really close. And as we got older, sort of leaving school, we all sort of went our own ways.
Yeah.
But as you left school, because you've all worked together, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, that kept us close. It weren't just that. We all played football together. You know, Tom didn't play, but Tom was always there. We played football together, not just me and Dan, and it was Goody, it was the other lads who worked with us. You know, and the same for when we all worked for the other guy.
Yeah,
you know,
so
it's all. We were a very close group of friends that way. You know, and I mean, and we still are. You know, so yeah, me and my brothers are always close. Always close. Don't get me wrong, you row like.
Oh, of course. That's when when you're closest, when you end up arguing.
Exactly, you row and you sort of throw cricket bats and stuff at each other, don't you? But you know, and we remain close. You know, without a shadow of doubt, we had remained close. You know, close family. My mum and dad split up when I was young. Well, not young. I was about 16.
I think as well, when your brothers, when your mum and dad split, you sort of. All siblings, you sort of huddled together a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it weren't a nasty split. We didn't go through a nasty divorce. You know, I don't think I ever remember seeing them argue. But you know, they just drifted apart, and so it weren't nasty. But you know, we were incredibly close. Well, but my dad was a brilliant dad growing up. You know, he took us everywhere to football. My brother was a good footballer, like a lot better than me. You know, he played for Ipswich, Colchester. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I always admitted that, you know. And it actually caused quite a rift when my brother got offered schoolboy forms at Colchester and wouldn't take them because he didn't want it. He wanted to play football with his friends and enjoy it. And that did cause a few rows in our household, especially with my granddad. But, you know, it's another story altogether. So, yeah, we had a great childhood, very close. You know, and I think that closeness helped the business as well because, you know, I really felt, you know, going to work wasn't a chore. Yeah. It was a pleasure. You know, I loved everything about that business. You know, I liked all the employees were top lads. You know, I loved the people we worked for were sound. You know, it was a really nice environment. And I'd like to think that anyone who worked with us at that time would say it was a good environment to work in, you know.
I think when you're working together, especially in a construction or that sort of environment, when you get a good group of lads together, you're all there for the money and you're working to get the job done, but you dig in that hole next to a guy who's digging, and the less you dig, the more he's got to dig. So when you get a good camaraderie together and you all sort of work together, it is a pleasure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, you know, and that's... And I think that's one of the biggest keys in having something that's half successful in a business is you've got to be close. You know, you've got to do a bit of socialising together. You know, you've got to encourage that. You know, at that time, we probably over-socialised together. You know, I'm sure a lot of our missus would say that we overdone it, you know, but it was a special time. I just remember absolutely loving that period of my life, you know, building a business. But I can remember us buying our digger, and it was like, it did feel like we were there, you know. It was only a 5-ton machine, but to us, to me especially, I can't speak for Goody and Dan, and we never had the conversation, but, you know, it felt like we were there. You know, there's pictures of my kids in there. Well, not Bailey, because he's too young, but my daughter, Kyra, and my son, Jaden. You know, there's pictures of them in there very young, having a go in the machine when we first bought it. And it felt such an achievement. It really did feel such.
That was one of your first goals where you felt like.
Definitely. It was such a big achievement for us to buy that, and you know, since I started, I always wanted to have my own business, and I wanted to be successful in it. So it did feel like we were getting somewhere, you know.
Yeah. At what point did you feel like your business started to get, or did you feel like it was getting too much at some point, where the growth was getting bigger and bigger?
Only not in terms of running it, in terms of cash flow.
That's what started to.
Yeah, in terms of cash flow, you know, it's very hard to cash flow a company, and it doesn't. You know, you can have a good start-up pot, which we didn't, by the way. We had absolutely zero. We started with nothing. But it was. I think cash flow to every business is the hardest thing, isn't it? You know, that is incredibly hard. You know, and people, sometimes the lads who work for you, you try and do a lot for them. You try and do a lot for them and help them as much as they can, but they don't. They just think that you're making shitloads of money.
Yeah.
And sometimes, don't get me wrong, there is times where you have few good hits. But there is, most of the time, you know, you might make a few shillings, but by the time you paid all your insurances, your vans, you know, all your taxes, your materials, you know, their wages, that don't leave a lot of gold in it sometimes. So that's the hardest thing. That was the hardest thing, the cash flowing and maintaining the growth whilst it was sustainable. It's always got to be sustainable growth, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know how your contracts worked, but you're always waiting for that next one to come in, and then the cash flow from the last one has got to help prop up the beginning of the next one, and you're almost always living on that hook of.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right when people stick to their payment terms. You know, when we had payment terms of 30 days, if they stuck to it, it was sound. It's when people started taking a piss and doing 60, 90 days, and in some cases, you know, a lot longer than that. In some cases, not paying us at all.
Yeah.
You know, we had one barrister not too far from down here who we done a load of work for, and there was no problem with the work, nothing wrong with it at all. He never gave us any quibbles about the workmanship, and he just stung us for the best part of 30 grand, you know, and that's that at that size, that's an awful lot of money. It's a lot of money in any.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and that was quite a bit of thing to. And he just turned around and said to me and Goody, and he said, if you want it, you have to take me to court and I'll pay you £1 a week. And you just think, you know, how are we going to win up against a barrister? You know,
yeah,
probably wrongly now. If I'd do it now, I'd take the bastard to court. But you know, in them days, he just knew that he had us beaten. You know, and it's just wrong, isn't it? Yeah. I think he gave us a fucking about £8 grand. I think. In the end.
So you're at a point, your business is going well, you're all making money, you're growing at a successful rate. What happens next?
A phone call that changed my life forever.
So what? Your business is going well. When is this phone call coming in?
Just on a standard working day. You know, it's just it's a day like no other. You know, no different to any other day. You know, I was working on site with a couple of me lads. You know, and it was just a normal day. The only thing was pissing down with rain. It was a miserable day, miserable January day, and It weren't an unusual phone call, you know, a phone call from a director of main contractor that I worked for since we started. You know, they'd actually been very prominent in us growing. You know, they'd been a big part of our growth, and they'd supported us well. And so I answered the phone very cheery, you know, and to be told, you know, there'd been an accident, which you know, I literally laughed at him and said, "What the silly fucker's done," you know. And that's when he said, "No, it's serious, Matt. You need to get over here straight away." So I jumped in my van. The lads wanted to come with me, and I started making my way over to the site, which was about 40 minutes away from where we were working. You know, and the hardest thing, I think, when you're on that journey there, you know, you don't know the implications, the consequences, you know, what's going to happen when you get there. You don't really know anything. I didn't really know anything about what happened. I just knew that there'd been an incident, you know, but...
Did you have a sense it was serious from him just telling you there's...
I knew it was serious because the way his voice was. You know, I knew there was something really amiss by the way his voice was. And, you know, and it's a lot, you know, when anything happens, people obviously they don't know the details, but one of the most, you know, hardest things when you make them phone calls to people to tell them there'd been an accident. You know, I didn't know the severity at this time, but obviously I then had to ring the people's relatives who were working on that site, you know, which was incredibly difficult, ringing your mum, your dad, you know, your sister-in-laws.
So it's your brothers that were on this site?
Yeah, two of my brothers and two good friends. Like I say, we were all close. You know, weren't just me brothers, you know. Adam's brother Jay was it still is one of my best friends. And Adam was part of a big part of our friend circle, you know, and had been for an awful lot of years. And PJ, you know, he'd lived in the same village as me all my life. He's a little older than me, but he was someone I drank with for a long, long time, you know, and I knew very well and had a lot of fun with, you know. So it was awful having to ring their families, you know, because it's not just the accident, it's the guilt straight away that you feel yourself that someone's been hurt on your site. And like I say, at the time, I didn't know how hurt they were or anything like that.
And I suppose when you're making them phone calls, they've got the same questions that you're asking. Who?
Yes.
How bad?
And I didn't have the answers, which again I hate. When someone asks me a question, I want to be able to give them an answer. You know, and I couldn't give them it. You know, once I'd made the calls, I obviously tried to get hold. I'd tried to get hold of the site agent before I made the calls, but I couldn't get hold of him. You know, as you can imagine, an accident on site, his phone's going to be, you know,
going crazy.
Yeah, you know, he's going to have a lot of phone calls and things he's got to do, hasn't he? So, you know, and when I finally got hold of him and he told me things weren't very good, you know, it's incredibly difficult. You know, he said to me, you know, PJ, and when he uttered these words, it buckled me. You know, he said that PJ and Adam were in the ambulance getting CPR. You know, because even after, I still thought it weren't that serious. You know, I thought that I'd speak to him and he'll say, "That's all right, mate." You know, they're not, you know, a bit bust up, but they're going to be all right. But it is, you know, when he said that PJ and Adam were in that ambulance getting CPR and your brothers are still trapped, but it's not looking good. You know, I absolutely, I don't know, I can't explain it. It absolutely busts me up.
So he's told you what the accident has actually happened, or did you?
He told me that the cage has collapsed. You see, the boys were they were building a big reinforced concrete structure. So it was 11 metres wide, 22 metres long, and just over 2.5, just over 2 metres deep. Big reinforced steel cage. They were tying the last few bars on the Friday, ready for the pour on the Monday, when the cage racked, sort of going over and crushing the lads. But even at that time, I couldn't understand how it could have hurt them, because of the way I thought that they'd be doing the work. I couldn't see how it could have hurt them. But to tie these particular bars, the designer had made it so that they had to be inside the cage to tie them. And to me, that sounded crazy.
Yeah.
You know, when he told me they were inside the cage, I was like, you've got to be fucking joking me. The fuck are they doing in there? You know, and yeah, it's just the shock, you know, and as you're driving there, you sort of just numb. But, you know, even when I was driving there, I had the same thoughts just going round and round in my head, you know. Don't panic when you get there, everything will be fine, you know. This doesn't happen to me. Which you're just going round and round, you know. And I can't explain why that was. You know, you only ever think you're going to read about it, or you're going to see it on the TV or hear it on the radio. You know, you don't ever think it's going to actually happen to you.
It's surreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's things like that, it don't happen to me.
No, that's right, and they don't, you know. And literally, that was just going round and round in my head. Don't panic, when you get there, everything will be fine, you know. Going round and round in my head, and as I got down onto the site, you know, Dave, the director of the main contractor, and his business partner are there. You know, and I wanted to get down and see me brothers. I wanted to see the boys, you know, and they wouldn't let me anywhere near that site. You know, and while this was going on, you know, something that makes me really cross, already the board of the client were in the, you know, it seemed like they were totally callous towards what was actually going on outside, because all they were doing was having a board meeting in their office, basically trying to get their way out how they can be associated with it. And that's exactly what they were doing. Wow. You know, I won't say the company name because I'll probably end up getting sued or some shit. But, you know, they were already, I weren't long getting there after the accident, you know, say maybe an hour and a half, and they were already having a fucking board meeting. You know, and that wound me up beyond belief. I was really cross about that, especially when the directors, the main contractor, disappeared to go into that meeting as well. And but they were called in there.
And are they being called in while these guys are still trapped?
Yeah. Well, this is, you know, I hadn't been told my brothers were dead yet, or the other boys. Wow. You know, they were already in a board meeting. And this is what I met, you know, when I go out talking, I talk about how you soon realise a lot about people. And, you know, and all of a sudden you straight away realise that when something happens, all the people are doing, they're scurrying to cover their arse and totally distance themselves from it. You know, you can think you've got a lovely relationship with, working relationship with people, and you can soon see when things go wrong, you soon see that, yeah, you are. You fucking well are. You know, and that's exactly how I felt on that site. I felt very alone, you know. I felt like a guilty party, you know. I felt so guilty, and you know, it was awful.
So you arrive on the site, and two of your best friends are being treated for CPR, and your two brothers are still trapped in the cage, and they're not letting you anywhere near the site. And are you? I mean, how crazy are you trying to get on there?
Well, you can imagine what I was like.
Yeah.
You know, I was worried. I was angry. You know, I felt guilty. I had all these emotions going around in my head, and you know, and no one would tell you anything. You know, this is when I still smoked. One bloke went off and got me 20 fags, but you know, that was literally all really the contact I had with anyone. You can imagine what my phone was like. Yeah. My phone was going mad from like my family, the other families. You know, and I couldn't give them the answers still. You know, I felt incredibly, I don't know, useless really. I couldn't do anything. You know, Goody and his brother came over there as quick as they could. And it was a bit better when they got there. I did, you know.
You didn't feel so alone?
No, I didn't. And we had a bit of support and that. You know, be honest, this is the first time I ever spoke about that night, if I'm to be truthful. I don't know why I'm doing it now, but yeah, I held a lot of stuff in about that night, you know, and it was awful. You know, yeah, it was awful.
I can imagine. I can see. Obviously, it's still, you know, I think that's something that you can never really even come to terms with. I mean, people talk about coming to terms with things, but to know that your two close friends are, you know, on the brink of death.
Yeah.
Your two brothers are trapped, and there's nothing you can do. You feel so alone. No one's giving you any answers, and the people that you have been working with for so long, all they're really caring about is how can they get out of it as quick as possible.
Yeah, I think, like the director's the main contractor, I think they were in a position where they were getting dragged into that meeting, really. It's more the client I had the ump with, if I'm to be truthful, because, you know, to have a board meeting while all this shit's going on outside, I just think it's totally callous. You know, I just think it shows total disregard for four lads who were trying to build them something, and something terrible had gone on. And I still feel angry about that now.
So, who delivers the bad news to you?
The policeman, finally. Again, I can't tell you how long I'd been there. It felt like bloody hours, you know. And he comes over and says, "I'm really sorry, but PJ and Adam died in the ambulance, and your brother's are still trapped but won't come out alive."
That's hard, Matt.
It's very hard. Like I say, I'm really pleased at the time, like Goody and his brother were there. You know, but it was incredibly difficult. Again, for them feelings, you know, you feel guilt. You just, all sorts is going through your head, you know. I've got to go and face my mum, I've got to face my dad. I've got to face my nephews. You know, it's incredibly tough.
Did you want to, at that point when you're told that, you know, they've all passed, but your brothers are still in that hole, I mean, did you want to stay?
I couldn't leave there. I couldn't leave there until I knew my brothers had been freed. Again, I can't explain why I felt like that. You know, a lot of people think I was nuts, I expect, but I couldn't leave that site until I knew my brothers were freed and were going to wherever they were going, you know.
That first phone call you make, who's that to?
Obviously, I have to ring home. All my family were at my house. So my mum, my dad, my sister-in-laws, you know, my nephews who were 6 months old and 2, my daughter who was 3, my son was 9. You know, so the younger ones, they don't remember it, but my son remembers it very vividly. You know, and it messed him up for quite a while. The moment I rang up and told his mum, Nan and Grandad that his heroes, his uncles, weren't coming home, you know, messed him up. I say messed him up, he went off the rails at school. You know, he wasn't really a fighting lad, but he started fighting, he got into trouble. He's always been a bit mischievous, do you know what I mean? But it affected him, you know, and he's still very... And I'm incredibly proud of him. He's turned out into an incredible lad, really great lad. But he went through some hard times, and yeah, he had it hard. He had it hard the next few years, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a bit.
You phoned home and you've told everyone. I mean, me personally, I would have found that so hard going home. That drive home and walking in that front door. I mean.
Oh, but the thing is, we didn't have time to think because my phone's just going mental. All my friends were a lot of. I can't remember how many of them was going, but there's a few of my friends then heading off to go snowboarding.
Right. Okay.
I can't remember if they. And they heard, and so I was speaking to them. I was speaking to people at home. Everyone was hearing. You know, my phone was going. Not just like Goody's phone, his brother's phone. You know, Kerry Ann was taking phone calls saying, "I'm really sorry to hear Matt's dead." You know, it was You didn't get time to think, really, not on that way home.
I remember speaking to you before. How quickly were the press there? I mean,
Well, the press were there before we left site, and I don't know how long they'd been there because I obviously hadn't been paying attention. But and there was a lot of press there.
And I remember you saying to me, like, they just were hounding, and they wouldn't leave you alone.
Yeah, the next few days was awful. Really, it was really awful. Not so much from me at that time, but it was like my mum. The next morning, I got a phone call about 7:30 in the morning to go down there because they're banging on my mum's door.
The press were banging.
Press were banging on my mum's door, and I'm not just talking about one newspaper. I'm talking about virtually every tabloid you can think of, banging on my mum's door. Not just my mum, my nan, the other families involved. And the amount of press around the centre of our village, even where I live, there's a war memorial, and people had started putting flowers, football shirts, cards all around them. And I used to get my dog and go down there and read where they'd all come from, about 6:30 in the morning. And even then there'd be press in the village, and this went on for quite a while,
Did they target you, the press?
I wouldn't say it was targeted. It wasn't. It's not me so much. They were trying to ask. It was other people. They wanted stories and stuff. Yeah. You see, they didn't really hassle me as such. It was more, some of them were writing absolute shite in the paper and just getting a lot of facts wrong. But they may only be little facts. But you see, when the family's involved reading it, it's a big thing to them. And it might only be a little something. I end up ringing. This is when the News of the World was still being published, and I end up ringing the editor from the News of the World to try and get him to fuck off, basically, and leave us alone.
Yeah, it's unbelievably relentless.
It is. However, these people who are actually who are famous deal with this sort of thing, I've got no idea.
And your poor mum, she's lost her two sons, and her other son is entangled in this absolute mess, and how she's dealing with that, and the press are not leaving her alone constantly on her front door.
It's awful. It's awful for everyone. It's not just it's obviously incredibly awful for all the families, but for the whole village. It was really tough. My other brother had moved to a place called Rickenhall, which is about 5 miles away from us. So my brother Tom and PJ were from Stanton, and my brother Dan and Adam lived in Rickenhall, Botesdale, but obviously Dan was a Stanton lad. But it was incredibly tough for them two villages, and the community. The community were fantastic. We had people bringing us round food and ready cooked meals. They meant really well, but sometimes I just want them to fuck off and leave me alone, really did. But they meant well, when I was taking my kids to play, or my daughter to play school and that, they all meant really well, but you do just want to be left alone.
I think you just want to escape it, don't you?
Well, you do. Yeah, you do. It don't seem real, You just think you're going to wake up and everything will be gone away,
I think as well, when anything dramatic happens to you, you go when you can sleep. Sleep's just like a something that rarely happens. But when you do get to sleep, it's when you wake up and you have that 3 or 4 seconds where nothing's happened, and then you remember oh shit,
and then you start getting the flashbacks and everything.
So you're now at this point where all this has happened, and you sort of think things can't get worse. What happens from there?
Obviously, there's an incredible long wait, or it feels like a long wait to have the funerals. And you finally get the funerals done, and sorry, that sounds really crass, but you go through it. That's quite harrowing in itself. Organising them. Little details of things. They never leave my head. Never, ever, ever. Every day.
And I think, like you say, that it's crass, but I think when you do lose someone, especially someone who's close to you, I mean, me personally, well, pray to God, touch wood, I never lose anybody in them circumstances. But with funerals, it sounds horrible, but you do just want to get them out of the way because you want to have that closure.
But do you know what, though? You know, they were big affairs, all the boys' funerals, all four of them. You know, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of people there. They were all very popular lads. But that's probably when I felt at my lowest afterwards, because everyone else can go back to their normal lives, and you know, don't get me wrong, they're still feeling sad, and you know, they're very, but their life goes back to normal, and my life will never be normal.
Did you feel it sort of? And I know you can't speak for Goody, he's not here, but did you feel guilty that it's them and not you?
I certainly felt guilty that I put him in that position. You know, I took that job on. I took a job on out of a natural skill set. Natural knowledge. You know, we've done a lot of steel work, we've done a lot of shuttering carpentry, you know, we've just done a big basement, but it was different, you know, this was in mass. You know, and I felt guilt like you wouldn't believe. You know, trying to look my mum in the eye was something that was, you know, I couldn't look my mum in the eye for a long, long while.
Parents are the ones you go to when you're at your most vulnerable.
Yeah, I couldn't do that, could I?
And that's what I'm saying.
You know,
so that
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that, you know. So yeah. It was very difficult, a period of my, and I got fantastic friends. They tried to help, but you know, I felt very, very alone.
When you look back, was you pushing people away?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's only when you have that time to look back at it that you realise, you know, what you become. You know, I turned into an arsehole.
I think it's self-hate, isn't it? Where you hate yourself so much you just don't want anyone to be.
I didn't like myself. You know, I could make people laugh in a pub. I could still try and be Jack the Lad and all this sort of bollocks, but inside I was a very broken man. A very broken man. I just tried to mask it, you know.
Obviously, being the owner of the company that this has happened to, there's implications of 4 people dying on your site.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is that everything you're going through, you're then hit with a legal case.
Yeah.
How does that start?
It starts about 14 days after the accident, roughly. You know, when you have to have that initial meeting with your insurance company. You know, and I mean, me and Goody were just a couple of lads trying to make our families' lives a little bit better. You know, director for us was a posh term.
Yeah.
You know, for all 3 of us, it was just a posh term. You know, something that we had to call ourselves. Really, we were groundworkers is what we were.
Yeah.
We weren't directors. But legally, we were directors. Yeah. You know, and we had to face the facts, you know. And one of the developers we done a lot of work for, a guy that I still speak to now, I did fall out of him a bit later on, but that was a lot to do with how I was. But again, I'll probably come back to that later. Around the time of the accident, like I say, he'd helped us a lot, growing as a business, not financially, but with guidance. Guidance. Yeah, that's the word. He'd give us a lot of guidance and had helped us. And he rang up and said, "Would you mind if I come and sat in on your meeting with the insurance company, because you know I really don't think you and Goody understand what's about to happen to you."
And I imagine he's looking in, thinking that he can see what's happened and thinking these guys, their heads ain't going to be in the right place and they're going to need some help.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, it was. I probably didn't give him the credit he deserved at the time, which I feel again bad about, because it was over an hour's journey for him to come to my house or come to Stanton. You know, and it was an incredible thing that he done for us. You know, because you know, me and Goody had no idea about all this stuff that we're about to go into, and you know, he helped us so much. When I look back at that just him being there, and yeah, I can remember him very clearly as I walked out the church, you know, and seeing how he was. He's one of the faces I really remember as I walked out of that church that day. You know, and for him to do that, it was a great thing for us. And he sat there. We organised it up at Goody's dad's farmhouse.
So sorry, you're organising to meet your insurers for
Yes.
the first time after all this.
Yeah. So we're only a few days after the accident. Yeah.
So you're a few days after the accident. You haven't had the funerals yet?
No.
Haven't had the funerals yet. It's all still very raw.
Yeah.
And you've got to sit down and have a conversation about money
Yeah.
with some insurance. And you're thinking, nothing in my life can get any worse from
No, I mean, it's not something you want to be dealing with, you know. When he walks in, you know, I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but, you know, typical looking insurance guy, you know, comes in with a little bit of a swagger to him, you know, sits down, literally we have a little bit of chat, you know, he has a little bit of his coffee, and then he looks at things, you know, looks at the paperwork and that, and says, I don't think you're covered for that. Wow. You know, I don't think we can cover you for that, you know, and your heart just sinks. You know, I get very cross because, you know, in the November, my brother had upped all our insurances because a lot of it's based on turnover, isn't it, insurance? You know, and our turnover had grown, and my brother had upped it all, you know, upped our liability, upped our employers. So we were working, feeling
safe.
very safe. You know, we were working. We had adequate depth insurance because obviously at that time we'd done a bit more deeper drainage and stuff as well. So we were working, feeling great that we had this great cover. You know, and it was costing us a lot of money in terms of our turnover.
When you're spending a lot of money on anything like insurance, you think, well, that's costing me a lot of money. That's got to have covered.
Yeah, no,
me
you
in
do.
every scenario.
You really do. And, you know, I did not think for 1 minute having that meeting with the insurance guy was going to be anything more than a formality. You know, I just thought we are going to have to fill a load of forms in, you know, have to go through the whole thing again so he could write it down. And you know, the processes will just be the processes. I didn't think that we were in for, you know, a big, prolonged discussion stroke argument about it all.
So he says to you, you're not covered.
Yeah.
You're angry.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from there?
Basically, the guy who I told, like, Tony, his name is, who I sort of class like my father in business. That's what I always looked at him as. He takes on the task and has a heated discussion, goes on for quite some time.
You come out of that meeting, where are you standing now?
We're standing that they agreed to cover us. You know, relief, a bit of relief.
Do you think if your father in business, Tony, do you think if he wasn't there?
Yeah, I think we'd have been fucked.
Yeah.
No, I do.
That's what I wanted to say. That is it, isn't it?
Don't get me wrong, Goody's dad's shrewd as they come, you know. He's a farmer, isn't he? You know, there ain't a lot get past a farmer, is there? But I do think that it would have been very difficult for me and Goody because our heads weren't in it.
Yeah,
you know, Tony was upset about it all, but Tony could still take himself out of the situation to see things clearly, you know. And obviously, Goody's dad, to be fair, he's known me brothers and them boys all for donkeys. So he probably couldn't do what Tony could do and distance himself. And you know, we were still young lads, really.
Really, he saved you there, didn't he?
Yeah, definitely. No doubt in my mind about that. No doubt in my mind about that. And I'm pretty sure if Goody was sat here, he would say the same.
I mean, did you have any legal implications of corporate manslaughter?
Not me and Goody. We didn't. No.
I mean, that's a relief, I would say.
It is, but we're still arrested as Matthew Hazelton and Neil Goodrum, and we have to go to the police station. You know, not just as Matthew Hazelton and Neil Goodrum, as Hazegood Construction. You know, and we still have to go and do all the interview under the camera. You know, and they are reasonably sympathetic, but it's still not a nice feeling.
No, because
because they're digging up. The trouble is, and I know Goody would say that if he was sat here, they're trying to constantly trip you up. That's how it feels. Trying to make you say, they'd almost try and put words in your mouth, is how it felt, to sort of implicate yourself in some way. I mean, I was very honest, as Goody was, you know. We had faults in that accident, you know, and we knew that. You know, we were charged both as Matthew Hazelton and Neil Goodrum and Hazegood, you know. But you're about 14 days after when this happens, and you just, you know, you get into that little process, really.
Do you think it's for yourself, it was a time in your life where you sort of thought nothing could get any worse? You're the lowest of the low. They put me in prison. Do what you want to me.
I didn't feel anything. Yeah. I'd almost just like, I couldn't give a fuck anymore, you know. Nothing was going to bring them boys back, and whatever happened to us. I couldn't really give a shit.
It's hard as well because to me that's depressed. That's you don't get any more depressed. And for myself, I've suffered with depression, and it's a selfish thing to say, but I think it's an honest thing to say that when you're that low and you're that depressed, people say, "Oh, well, think about your children, think about your wife, think about your family," but there's nothing you can think about.
It's very difficult. No, it's very difficult. I mean, it took over our whole lives, and you know, there was probably it was awful. It's obviously going to take over our whole lives because of the closeness of it, but it was an awful time for both me and Goody.
I think with depression as well is people say, you know, think about your children, but you almost feel guilty, like, I don't deserve the love of my children. I don't deserve, and that depression sort of starts to eat you alive and your self-worth.
And absolutely, I mean, but this time, at this point, I don't feel like I was depressed. I felt like I was just totally so sad and broken that I don't think I had time for depression. I don't remember feeling depressed. I just remember feeling totally and utterly broken.
And so you come out of this insurance meeting, you come out of the police station, and you come out of the funerals.
Yeah.
How do you start to rebuild your life, or where does it go from there?
Well, at the time, you know, I didn't know what to do. You know, I was finished with the business, obviously. I was finished in construction. I was lost. I was totally lost. I didn't know what to do, you know. But you've got to remember, we still had a lot of lads that were reliant on us to pay their mortgages, their rents, you know, and that was a bit of a pressure. You know, and they were skint, you know.
It's hard as well when you've got people that rely on you for them payments and their money all the time. You almost look at them and feel the guilt of, don't worry, I'll look after you, because I'm used to being the breadwinner and the looking after everybody. And they work for you, and you sort of feel indebted to them.
I did, and like I say, that closeness again. You know, that closeness was, you know, I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to let them down, you know, and it was tough. You know, like I say, them boys were skint, and if I'm to be honest, you know, me and Goody was skint. You know, and money's a mere irrelevance to what I'm telling you about, by the way, but it's just it's something we had to deal with.
Life, the bills don't stop.
No, they don't.
No matter how sad you are, no matter how depressed you are, no matter what's going on, them bills don't stop coming.
No, they don't. I mean, you get, you know, obviously we lost an awful lot of money in that accident, and like I say, it is an irrelevance to what I'm talking about, but it is something else that Goody and I had to deal with.
I imagine that completely just wiped you out.
Well, you felt tired. I felt tired all the time, you know, and you know, and I'll go back to relationships again. Then, you know, people who couldn't wait to take you to the races and stuff, and you know, what take you on the piss and whatever else. You know, working people. You know, when you owed them a few bob and things weren't going well, you soon saw a different side to not all of them, but to a lot of them. You know, some of them really stuck by us and tried to help us, as well as our clients. You know, Tony, who I told you about, even the directors that up the accident. You know, we done a lot more work for them.
And they tried to.
They did, yes.
You went back to work after that. When did you make the decision? My bills keep coming in.
I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks after the accident. We decided to go back to work because we had no choice. You know, I didn't know anything else then, and I don't really know anything else now, if the truth be known.
You know, and as horrible as everything is, the bills are coming in. You've got to go back to work. You got to pay everyone's. You got to keep everyone helping paying their mortgages and their rents and everything. But I imagine when you go back, things just there's nothing the same.
It's soulless, you know. Whereas we had that, you know, I couldn't wait to get up to work. Now I didn't want to go. You know, the camaraderie we all had. Well, there was 4 massive people missing. There were 4 massive personalities, and it was never ever the same again. It could never be the same again. And you know, trying to even replicate it was a waste of time. You know, it was just the business was dead. You know, but we had to try and earn a living.
Do you think, in hindsight now, that you should have took more time off?
I think, in hindsight now, I should never have tried to run a business again at that time. Yeah, I think I should have possibly took more time off, but I couldn't afford to. You know, there's the conundrum. In hindsight, yes, I think I probably should have. I probably should have gone and seen someone.
Yeah, so you didn't get no help for
it? No, we didn't get offered none in them days. Now you get pissed off because everyone wanted to talk to you, you know, which would be a good thing. I think that shows how far we've come. But, you know, in them days, and also I you know, I was strong, you know, in my head.
I don't need help.
I don't need help, you know, and people told me you should really go and speak to someone. But, you know, to me, that was like being weak, you know, and I ain't a weak man.
Nowadays, it's definitely a better way of thinking of you're stronger by going to speak to someone.
And I think that's the correct way to be now, you know, and if it happened to me now, I'd like to think that I would do it. Yeah, I do think I would.
But they're the lessons you've learned through the
but that's the thing, isn't it? Had I never been through this, I'd probably still say, fuck off, I'm too strong for that. You know, nothing will break me.
But I think that's the power of your story, of when you tell people what's happened in your life and just the little things of now, I would go speak to someone, is it took you had to have that much loss, that much pain and hurt and go through all what you've gone through to be able to admit, I should have spoke to someone and I would have healed a lot quicker. That someone else in their life, they don't have to go through all that now because they can learn from the lessons that you've learned.
Well, hopefully they can, but not everyone will they? You know, hopefully they can. You know,
when you restarted this business up, how well did that go, and how long did it last?
It was all right. You know, it was all right. It was never the same again. We sort of paid a bit of debt off. We basically just ticked over and just kept the roofs over our heads, really.
Did you? How was you dealing with the grief? You know,
I didn't deal with it at this point. I didn't deal with it at this point at all. I was trying to throw myself into my work. I was trying to get that same buzz back, but I couldn't get it. And you know, just flat, you know, you just existed. That's what I done. I existed. I just got up, went to work, you know, done my thing, might go out at the weekend, take the kids out, or if we could afford to, you know, me and Kerry Ann were absolutely skint. And I mean skint. You know, I got behind on my mortgage. You know, I had over £2,000 worth of arrears on my mortgage. You know, and that don't sound a lot nowadays, but in them days I was probably only earning 500 quid, you know.
I remember my dad said a true comment to me. He said, £1's a lot of money when you ain't got £1.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and it was tough, you know. I can remember always having to raid me coppers and stuff like that to buy the fuel and to get food on the table, and it was incredibly tough times that we went through. And that's where I say, like, my youngest kids, obviously, I had another little boy after the accident, so they didn't really go through this like Jaden had to, you know, and he did have a rough time, you know, when he was young. And I ended up having to work 7 days a week to try to pay it all off, you know. So he lost me as well, you know.
The thing is, as well, when you're a kid and you're looking at your parents for a bit of guidance, but you're suffering as well. You're in a really bad place, and he's looking at you for the guidance, but you're not there mentally.
I weren't there. You know, that's one of the big regrets I've got, really, that I don't feel like I was, you know, I gave him enough as he was growing up, really.
I don't think it's fair to put that on yourself, that you could have been there because of what you've just gone through. I mean, what
It
guidance...
weren't his fault, though, was it, you know?
But, again, it wasn't yours either. And how can you give someone the guidance that they need when you're not mentally able to give yourself the help you need?
I know, that is very true, but yeah, it's still something that, you know, he had to do a lot on his own. I feel, anyway, mentally, that he did have to deal with a lot. I've never spoke to him about it.
Did your wife at the time, how was your relationship with her? Was that...
It was getting strained now, you know, because I was getting more and more wild, and my drinking was getting out of control.
And that's, I'm assuming, your escapism was the drink.
Well, yeah, because with drink and drugs, you know, it gave me escape from reality, didn't it? You know, for however long that buzz lasted, nothing else seemed real. You know, and I was drinking and doing gear for oblivion. I wanted oblivion, because then I didn't have to feel like I was feeling. You know, I had this thing in my head, you know, that I could do whatever I wanted, and no one could touch me because they won't take a third brother. I felt bomb-proof. I did. I felt invincible, you know, and I was leading my life like that.
And do you think the alcohol and the coke, that getting high and drinking, you felt more invincible? Like, I'm Matt, you know, take me on now.
Yeah, I look back on that time now and I cringe with how I got. You know, I really didn't like. I don't like how I was back then. You know, and I don't want to be like that person anymore. And yeah, it just at the time I thought I was being funny at times, but I look back now and you realise what a complete prick.
Numbing the suffering for
Yeah,
yourself.
it was. I wanted oblivion. Every time I went out, I wanted to get so fucked up that I was in oblivion. You know, and it didn't matter how I done that, I wanted to do that.
And then every time you wake up the next day, it's 10 times
It's
worse.
not that many years ago where I didn't want that anymore.
How long has it been since the initial accident?
2011, 21st of January 2011, so it's 12 and a bit years now.
12 and a bit years, and it's only been however long, 2 years.
I'd say probably, don't get me wrong, I still like to drink, but now I drink for a different reason, and there's a massive difference in your drinking. I used to drink for oblivion. Now I drink to enjoy myself and have fun.
Yeah.
So it's probably only been like 3 years or something since I've sort of started to...
I'm assuming when you got to a point sort of 3 or 4 years ago where you've accepted it. Because
that's exactly right.
I don't think you can ever get over something like that.
No.
And people say, oh, you'll get over it in time, or you'll come to terms with it in time. But I don't think you ever do. I think all you ever really do is accept it.
No, and I think you couldn't have worded that better. You know, I accepted that my brothers weren't coming back. I accepted that them, you know, PJ and Adam weren't coming back. You know, I accepted what had happened, and that's exactly what I'd done. You know, but it took all those years to do that.
Because you had a quite a hard path in between that initial accident and 4 years ago. I remember you telling me before that you'd been drinking and you ended up in another car accident that was sort of more pressure on you, wasn't there?
Yeah, I weren't drinking the day that I crashed that.
No,
I weren't.
It was that period of your life.
Yeah, it was. I crashed. I had a bad car accident. Yeah, I had a bad car accident where it would look like I was going to kill. You know, I'd killed somebody. You know, and That was that was the lowest point.
So
then.
tell me about that day. So you're out, you're working.
So I weren't working. I was giving someone a lift to somewhere, and I was driving down a road. I've been down loads of times, and it's little things that send my head off on a tangent, you know. And a piece of music come on the radio that's synonymous to that time, and I go straight out of a crossroads and hit a transit van doing 60 mile an hour. You know, and I was all right. I was a bit bust up, you know. My snout took another whack, but my passengers thankfully turned out that they were right. In the end, though, one had broken her neck. But it was the driver of the transit. You know, they told me that his blood pressure dropped ridiculously low, and they were very, very, very unlikely they were going to be able to keep him alive. You know, that he was going to survive. And at that moment, I was in total bits. You know, I think I realised how low that I had got.
All the while, all these things are happening. You know, you get the call, it can't get any worse. You lose your brothers, it can't get any worse. The media are knocking on your mum and dad's front door, it can't get any worse. The insurance, it can't get any worse. And then you have years of alcohol and drug abuse where you're trying to convince yourself that you're okay and you can handle it, and then this car accident, and you're looking like you've got an accident where you're going to lose someone else with something that you're involved in, and you just hit rock bottom.
It's just realisation how low I'd sunk. You know, it was awful. Really awful. And that weren't the only car accident I had. I had 2 or 3 round then. You got to bear in mind, I had 1 accident in my life before then. You know, my head was just scrambled. You know, I couldn't, my head was absolutely mangled. And, you know, and to think that it was going to possibly cost someone else their life just fucking bust me up, you know.
Is that the moment you changed?
I wouldn't say the moment I changed, the moment I knew I had to change before I hurt anybody else. You know, at this time, this is about 4 years on now, at this time I was really hurting people close to me. You know, I had turned into a complete wanker. You know, people who tried to help me, I weren't nice. I wasn't. I look back on that time and I don't feel like I was very nice to people.
What's the relationship with your parents like at this point?
I mean, my mum and dad, you know, my dad's a dad. But me and him, we're good now, but me and him drifted, you know, and I don't know whether it's my conscience or whether it was true or not, but I always felt like my dad blamed me. You know, my mum's fucking fantastic, you know, always been close. You know, and I was always really close. I've always been close to my dad. It was just over that period that
when you say
we seemed to drift apart for a few years.
When you say you felt like your dad blamed you, do you think that maybe he didn't, and it was more you blaming?
Yeah, well, quite possible.
You're
probably
blaming yourself
was
for it.
Probably was, but that's how it felt at the time. Whether it, you know, he probably didn't feel like that, but that's how it felt to me. You know,
where you're blaming yourself, you're distancing yourself from people, and then you're looking at that as, oh well, they're distancing themselves from me.
Yeah, but you know, I didn't hear from him so often, but then he was probably trying to deal with it as well. You know, so it's hard, isn't it? It's very hard. You know, you don't know how people. When something like this happens, there's no right or wrong way to deal with it. So my dad's way was probably to distance himself. You know,
and there's no guidebook, is there?
No, there isn't.
There's no script of what to do when you lose 2 of your children.
No, absolutely not. You know, and if I look at them now and I admire them, because if I was to lose 2 of my kids, you know, I'm not sure I'd come back. You know, it'd be very difficult.
I mean, as a parent myself, there's nothing worse, is there, than the thought of anything ever happening?
No. Nothing could hurt you that bad.
But I think as well, you say your mum was fantastic for all of that. You lose 2 children, and that's hard to deal with. But watching one of your children suffer, I think, is even harder.
I don't. At the time, I don't think I thought I was hiding it, you know. But when I look back, I don't think I hid it very well, you know.
I think the drugs and alcohol might have been a giveaway.
Yeah, but Mum didn't know about the drugs, you know. She knew, obviously, I went out and got smashed quite a bit. But when I say I was, it was only weekends, you know. I was still functioning. I might have a few drinks during the week, but I was still functioning. But it's just when I wanted oblivion, you know, and nothing, you know. So I was never an addict, but I was misusing. I think there's a lot of that goes on in life where people are misusing it to get away from their normal life rather than to have enjoyment, you know, and I was misusing them badly.
Your wife at the time, I'm assuming at this point, she's trying to hold a family together. She's trying to raise the children not on her own.
Well, but it was because you got to remember I was working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, we were in so much debt that I was working 7 days a week just to try and get my family back on track, you know, and try and get us out of debt, you know.
And I imagine the grief and the almost the guilt that you're feeling, the pushing people away. When you're at home, you're not at home.
No. I was an arsehole. I was angry. I was so angry about everything. You know, about 5 years, I was just angry all the time, you know. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a saint, but, you know, the way I spoke to people, and I was just an arsehole, to be honest, at home.
And at what point did you say enough's enough?
When it was really, you know, when I'd pretty much broken her. You know, mentally, I broke that poor girl. I didn't mean to do that to her either.
No,
you know, but I mentally broke her, you know.
Do you think that your punishment to her was really a punishment to yourself because you feel guilty that someone's loving you, you feel guilty someone's trying to help you, and you just want to escape?
I think I was just on self-destruct, if I'm to be totally truthful. I think that it wouldn't have... I don't know, I just was... I didn't like myself, you know, and there's a big problem when you don't like yourself. I turned into a complete arsehole, and yeah, I didn't like myself right a lot. So
she said enough's enough. You're on your own. You've had this horrific accident. Thankfully, this person doesn't lose their life, and you've realised I need help.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from there? Where'd you get that help?
Well, I got myself into a situation I couldn't get out of very easily, and to be fair, Kerry Ann come and dragged me out of it.
So even though you'd split up,
yeah, we'd split up. She'd come and she still, even though we'd split up, she still tried to help me sort myself out, and you know. But the thing is, we'd drift. You know, I'd done a lot of damage to her, and now we drifted quite a bit. And even though she tried to help me, even though we did try and get back together, but
the damage was done.
The damage was done, you know. I'd hurt her too much, you know. So we split for proper, you know, for good. But she helped me massively trying to unravel a mess that I left. You know, my relationship with my kid, even though I still saw him, but that was getting strained by some of my actions, some of the things that I was doing, and people I was with, and you know, so I was hurting my kids, which I you know, I didn't like. I was so you know, I was just angry all the time, really, as well, still. And yeah, but she helped me a lot trying to unravel that mess of financial, relationship wise, you know, personally.
So you start getting help and you start rebuilding your life. When was the point where you thought to yourself, things are actually going my way, things are starting to change?
Not for a long time, really. It felt a long time. You know, the last 12 years, to be honest, I put dates on stuff, but I don't really remember when they were, or I can just go close to it.
Do you remember a moment where the first time you felt happy?
Yeah, I'll tell you when that was. I know exactly when that was. When I regained my love for construction.
Tell me about that.
It took about 7 years for me to get to that. And it took me to work with my old boss again, who I told you about, you know, who we spoke about earlier.
And he's the guy who helped you through through the insurance case.
No, not him. He was the guy that we worked for. We all worked for at the start.
Okay,
so me, my brothers and Goody all worked for. He rang me up and said, "Do you want to bring a gang onto this housing development?"
It seems like you've had quite some strong pillars in your life. And
Oh yeah, no, he was a massive influence on my life. You know, he'd sorted out my first mortgage from start to finish. He'd basically put me from boy to man. You know, he'd been a good friend. He'd almost been like a big brother to me, to be quite honest, you know, and I thought an awful lot of him.
So this guy that you've told, hey, I'm leaving and I'm taking some of your best guys.
Yeah,
he then comes and says, hey, do you want your job back? It looks like you need
no, he was now a contract. He didn't have his own business anymore. He was a contracts manager in a big groundwork company. And he's always brilliant at his job, to be fair. And he just said, do you want to bring a gang down on here? And I said, yeah, I fancy that. And then I'd been on there about a week or so. He said, I want you to help run the site, you know. And when he said that to me, you know, what he done for me, you probably never know, but it gave me so much self-worth back. Him putting that trust and faith in me done so much for me getting better, to be quite honest. And he'll never realise that, to be honest, but it done a lot for me.
I think sometimes as well is when you have no self-worth, but someone sees something in you that you don't even see in yourself, you sort of think, me?
Yeah,
really?
no.
And you don't want to let them down.
No, 100%, and I didn't. You know, I absolutely loved running that site. I run it with a fantastic guy who I'm still friends with to this day. You know, we had fantastic lads on there. We had great engineers. We had so much. We had fun, but we fucking absolutely smashed it as well. You know, we turned a site round, and I freaking loved it. You know, at the time we took over, the main contractor had this like leaderboard of the subcontractors, and the groundwork company we were working for were at the bottom, and within 3 months we were at the top. You know, and that's you know, and that was I was running it with a great guy as well.
I can tell by your face at that point of your life it changed.
Yeah, no, it did. You know, I couldn't wait to get to work again. I'd be in that office an hour before anyone else would turn up most of the time. You know, and I'd be printing out all the drawings and that the lads needed when they were doing a new section of drainage or new plots. And I got that love back, you know, and it was so important for me because I had always loved my work when I was young. You know, and up to the accident, I loved my work. It was such an important part of my life. And to have that taken away, that love, and you have to do something that you don't love, you know, just to make ends meet, there was a massive part of me and my personality missing. My work was incredibly important, getting that back.
As well, when work is such a big part of your life and all your self-worth is sort of built around that, and you're good at your job, if you're good at your job as well, you sort of heavily depend on that as who you are as a person.
Yeah.
To have that completely shattered from underneath you, and then to get that back, I'm assuming that feels like a new chapter of your life.
Oh, no, it did do. It did do. But I could only get that love back for construction. Obviously, Gary played a massive part, but another big catalyst in me getting that love back was me falling into doing the speaking that I do.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
So I was best man at my best mate's wedding, and I'd always been quite confident speaking, and I'd done his best man speech without any notes or anything. And one of my friends said, well, you should really talk about your experience. You might be able to help people. So I thought, you know, then it got me thinking. I watched a few videos. You know, there was a guy called Paul Mahoney who used to speak, and a guy called Jason Anger who still does speak. And I watched their videos, and I quite liked Jason's style about how it, because at the end of the day, if I was going to do it, I had to do something that was going to capture my imagination, because I was so negative towards safety. To me, safety was something that got in my way of making money.
Yeah.
You know, so I had to get hold of me. So I wanted to do it in a style that I could do that. So even though mine and Jason's styles are very, very different, I liked, you know, it really captivated me.
You.
Yeah, it did. It really captivated me what he talked about and how in depth he went. So I thought about it, and then, well, actually before that, I'm jumping the gun a bit here. So he then went, anyway, my friend went and spoke to his father-in-law, who was then a guy in health and safety, quite high up in a company called Waits. Terry Lilly, his name, is a really good guy. And again, I'm still in contact with him. And again, he's been a massive catalyst in what he's done for me and me getting better. And he contacted Jason Anker, unbeknown to me, and I got an email or phone call, I can't remember what it was, from Jason, saying, can I come down and meet you? So we arranged a meeting, and we done it in a pub in Bury St Edmunds. And actually, the night before, the Friday, I think this was on a Monday, I think, on the Friday before that, it's when I was still in, like, absolute self-destruction. I got into a fight in a pub, and my knuckles were all dark, bruised up and that, and I'd headbutting a guy, you know, and it was when I was really at my lowest. And so I met him, we had a chat, and then obviously, like I said, I watched his videos before he come down, and then I met Jace, and I met with Paul Mahoney come down as well to meet me. And and I just really clicked with Jace, and Jace has become one of my best friends. You know, he loves football, music, boxing. You know, he loves all the things that I love.
Typical man stuff.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, and you know, he's another person who's a massive catalyst in my life, because getting me speaking and helping me and putting that time, and they put money into me as well. He gave me that platform to quite simply take my head for a shit, you know, and clear all that crap that had been spinning around in my head for all them years. You're talking about it, give me that place to get rid of it. And all of a sudden, my head was clearer, you know, because I'd got it out of my head. I'd finally managed to get all this shit in my head out. I could think a bit clearer. I got better and better at my work again. I was loving my work. I was getting better. And all of a sudden, I started on this, like, wheel, and everything started to clear.
You know what, as well? I think the talking about it, the more you talk about something, the more you accept it is what it is.
Yeah, but that also led to my acceptance of what had happened, because I was talking about it. All right, not to my family, you know, I find it incredibly difficult to talk to my family. But I'd found a way to clear my head. Fucking take my head for a shit, you know, and simply clear it.
It's funny you say that, because I'm working with a guy at the minute, and he's got a very, very fruitful and dark background. He's an ex-criminal who has done crimes that you couldn't, you know, you told anyone what he's done and you did just disregard him straight away.
Yeah.
And he's come out of prison and he's completely turned his life around. And if you met him now and didn't know his crimes, he's one of the most loyal, honest, hard-working, lovely human beings you'd meet. You know, he's empathy for absolutely anything. You know, you see a worm and he'll move it before he digs. He's just such a nice person. And I've chatted with him at work, and I've told him about the podcast and what we're going to be doing, and I've invited him on, and he has real trouble talking about his past. And over the last week where I've been working with him, he started to open up a little bit and talk to me. And he said to me today, I said, you know, I'm coming on and I'm going to be filming with yourself, and for him to watch it. And he said to me, thank you for this week. Like, it has helped him start talking about things. And I don't know if he's ready to come on the podcast yet, so I won't name drop him, but I do believe talking about things really
you can't understate it. It's the only way you can get better. I don't care what anybody says. It's the only way you can get better. If you're not good in here, the only way you can get better in there is by talking to someone and doing something about it. You know, that's the other thing. You know, once I started to get better, I know it don't look like it now. Started going to the gym. You know, it don't look like it now, but I'm happy fat now. But then I was miserable fat. You know, so I went and done something about it, and you start getting them. Once that fog starts lifting, you know, I felt like I was starting to feel like, right, I'm ready for all this now, and I can, you know, you know, obviously me and Kerry Ann's relationship broke down, but me and my kids are very happy. You know, I was now into another relationship with a who's been who's amazing. You know, and we have a very good life. You know, and all of a sudden my life was getting better.
Do you ever look back as well and the talks you do and what you say to people, the amount of people's lives you've changed by telling your story and that it's okay to not be okay?
I don't know if I've changed anyone. I don't think of it like that. I hope I have. I hope people can take something from it, and I hope that I have helped people. But I don't know. You don't know if you have.
I come and saw you speak, and when I saw you speak, it had a massive impact on me. But when we left, the guys that I'd come with, it was the topic of conversation for the next week or two. Where
was it really?
Really, yeah.
That's very humbling.
The resilience that you showed. To lose your brothers, the car accident, the insurance, your parents, all of that. Just walking through your town and seeing the flowers and the shirts. When you just get to the bottom, I look at you sometimes and I think about your story and I think, would I still be here? Could I handle that? And you did, and you come out of it. And your resilience and strength, I imagine, has changed a lot of people's lives, where they think to themselves,
that's very humbling. I really appreciate that.
You know.
Well, I'm. You know, one of the biggest things, if I could give anything to anyone, is resilience. You know, that's the best. You know, I always say to my children, if I can give you anything in my life, it would be resilience. You know, because you are going to get knocked down in life. You've just got to keep plugging away. Things will get better. You know, they will. You know, and it's incredibly tough to get through some things, but you just got to keep going, haven't you?
Thank you for coming on, Matt. I really appreciate you sharing our story with us, and get people. I'll put all the links in the bio for people to come and check out your other stuff and maybe come see you live.
Right, thank you very much. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
Allow me to reintroduce myself.